Some days, life feels like it has a twisted sense of humor. Ironic, sharp, almost cruel. As if the universe kept your old humiliations locked in some secret drawer, only to throw them back in your face the moment you thought you had finally moved. Today was one of those days. I usually don't let my feelings interfere with work. Teaching has always been my anchor, my safe place. After the divorce, after the empty nights and the pitiful glances, it was inside the classroom that I found pieces of my dignity again. My students didn't know my pain. They didn't ask about my past. They just wanted to be seen, to be taught, and that I still knew how to do. The school's routine gave me a kind of peace. The hallway noise, the pages flipping, the young voices trying to find themselves. It all reminded me that life goes on, that despite everything, I was still needed somewhere. But today, when I opened my classroom door to welcome the new semester's class, my heart skipped a beat. He was there. Not him, her son. The last name on the roster, his face no, his eyes were unmistakable. That same piercing gaze, the same expression, of someone who always thinks he's one step ahead. He was the son of the woman who destroyed my marriage. The woman who smiled at me while secretly laughing behind my back. Who was sleeping in my bed just months later. Who dined with my then husband at restaurants I introduced them to. Who pretended to be my friend while watching my life crumble from the inside out. And now, her son is my student. He introduced himself like anyone else, polite, poised, even. A bit charming. The other students already seemed to know him, or at least had heard of him. That's Leo, someone said. Transferred from up north. His mom's pretty well known. Yes, she is, at least to me. Far too well. Known through my lonely nights crying on the couch. Known through the late night texts I found too late. Known through how the man who once swore he'd love me for life started turning his phone face down. I tried to breathe. I really did. It wasn't the boy's fault. I knew that. He wasn't responsible for his mother's choices, but still, seeing him there, sitting in the chairs I'd arranged with care, hurt in ways I hadn't anticipated. Like the past had stepped out of a memory and was staring right at me. I spent the day clinging to my composure. I read through names, explained the syllabus, smiled when I had to. But every time our eyes met, it was like the past stared back. Clara, he called out after class. Most students had already left. Do you want me to drop these books off at the library? I can help with that if you want. His voice was steady, kind, like his father used to sound before he became someone else. I nodded, unsure why. Maybe because it was the least I could do to prove I was above all this. That I wouldn't let old ghosts shake me. That I was no longer the woman crying in the staff bathroom. But as I watched him leave, arms full of books, I realized something. Fate has a cruel way of testing your scars. The woman who broke my family now needed me, even if indirectly. Her son was under my care, under my guidance, under my eyes. And I knew with absolute certainty that she had no idea yet. It's curious how memories we thought buried deep resurface with such clarity when we least expect them. Seeing that boy, Leo, stirred something inside me in a way few things have in recent years. He wasn't to blame, of course. But it's impossible to ignore the layers of pain his last name carries. That night, after I got home, I tried to distract myself like I always do. I made a simple soup, sat on the couch, and left the TV on some program that didn't require my attention. But my mind kept drifting back to that look, to that moment in the classroom when the past invaded my carefully constructed routine. I remember clearly the day I found out. It was a Tuesday. It was raining, as if cliches knew exactly when to strike. My then-husband, Daniel, came home later than usual, and for the first time, I felt like I was being watched. I knew it, but I couldn't explain it. I knew it was coming. 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 I knew it was coming He left his phone on the table with the screen lit. It was as if he wanted me to see. As if deep down, he wanted everything to come out. I didn't have to unlock anything. The notification said more than any hidden password ever could. I miss you since yesterday. Last night was amazing. I love you. And the name. The name was hers, Ana Paula, the same woman I had welcomed during a difficult time, the one I went to parties with, the one who told me I deserved someone better when I argued with Daniel about money or him forgetting important dates. She knew. Always. Knew. And still, she went and took away the little I had left, my home, my husband, my trust, reliving all of that because of a student felt unfair. But the heart doesn't always understand the rules of reason. At school, the following days were a constant. Exercise and self-control. Leo was indeed a good student. Intelligent, curious, respectful. It was as if the universe had decided he would be everything I would be forced to admire, even against my will. During classes, he asked questions that showed he was above average. He participated maturely in discussions. He had a striking presence, but no arrogance, and that bothered me, because it reminded me that maybe he inherited the best from his father, and none of the mother. On Friday, I organized a small dramatic reading exercise in class. Each student had to pick a text and perform a scene in front of their classmates. Leo chose a passage from To Kill a Mockingbird, and his reading was so captivating that, for a few minutes, I forgot who he was. I saw only a bright, sensitive boy with sincere dedication, and at that exact moment, something inside me began to crumble. Maybe because I knew sooner or later that wall I had built between me and that last name would fall. After the performance, he approached me again. "Miss Clara, do you have a minute?" I took a deep breath before answering. "Of course, Leo. Go ahead. I just wanted to thank you for being kind to me this week. I know transfers aren't easy and sometimes teachers are hard on us." I looked at him, searching for irony between the lines. But there was none. He was sincere. It was as if he was really trying to build a connection with me. And maybe that scared me the most, because what if he wanted to get closer? And what if somehow he found out who I used to be? I tried to treat everyone the same, I replied, keeping a neutral tone. "But thanks for saying that." He smiled. And for a second, I swear I saw Daniel in that smile. The same crooked half smile, the same way of touching his bangs like it was involuntary. My stomach twisted. "My mom said she studied in this school when she was young," he said naturally. "She said there was an amazing teacher. Clara." I think, funny, huh? Frozen. That was the feeling. My fingers still held a book, but it was as if everything around me had stopped. "Oh, what a coincidence," I managed to say. "I've been here a long time." She said that teacher was smart, but a bit closed off. He laughed. "I don't think that fits you. You're pretty welcoming." I smiled lightly, just enough to close the conversation. He left, and I stayed there, alone, staring at the empty classroom, feeling the walls closing in. Ana Paula had spoken about me to her own son, and from the light tone, from the way he mentioned it so casually, it was obvious she never told him the truth. Never said she ruined the marriage of the woman who was now educating him. Never said my pain had a name and a last name, and that he carried both. And then, in the thick silence that followed, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I was getting emotionally involved with this student. Not out of attraction, not out of empathy, but out of unresolved anger. Out of an absurd need to find some justice in the chaos Ana Paula caused in my life, and that scared me more than anything. Weeks passed, and with them, an invisible weight settled in my chest. Leo continued to be an exemplary student, almost perfect in every way. But to me, he was a constant reminder of what I had lost, of the betrayal that silently unfolded before my eyes. It was as if every glance we exchanged carried a million unspoken words, a subtle invitation to relive all I had sworn to leave behind. Inside, I struggled against the urge to uncover more about him, about that family that somehow still controlled a part of my world. Questions kept arising. What was it like to grow up with such a manipulative mother? How did Leo deal with it all, never showing a hint of resentment? Did he understand the depth of the damage that woman had caused in so many lives? I tried to stay focused on teaching, but it was impossible to ignore the fact that the story between me, Daniel, and Ana Paula was a ghost haunting every corner of that school building. And no matter how much I tried to keep an emotional distance, the physical proximity forced me to face my feelings head on. One rainy afternoon after class, Leo surprised me with an unexpected invitation. He wanted me to come watch a community theater performance where he and some classmates were acting. At first, I hesitated. Why? Maybe because the suggestion felt like an attempt to involve me in his personal life, something I was afraid to face, but curiosity overcame fear. I accepted. That day, I sat in the audience with a mixture of pride and anxiety. I watched Leo shine on stage with an intensity found only in those who want to prove something to the world. His performance was full of passion, but also carried a vulnerability few could perceive. As I applauded, I felt something shift inside me. Something began to loosen, to open up to the possibility of forgiveness, to see Leo not as the son of the woman who destroyed me, but as someone who needed understanding and support. After the show, I talked with him and his friends. They seemed like an improvised family, united by hardship and the desire for a better future. Leo spoke little about his mother, but let slip that their relationship was complicated, full of silences and unresolved pain. I left that night certain my life was entering a new chapter. A chapter where the past still cast shadows, but where I could finally choose what my story would be from then on. I was no longer just the victim. I was becoming the author of my own destiny. After that night at the theater, something shifted between me and Leo. There was no direct conversation about feelings, no clear outpouring, but the atmosphere between us had changed. He started looking at me differently, with more respect, maybe, or simply more attention. And against my own will, I began to see him differently. It was as if I was finally separating what he represented from who he truly was. The following Monday, when he walked into the classroom, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. He was carrying the world on his shoulders. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there in the way he walked, and how he avoided eye contact with certain classmates, and how quickly he packed his books, as if he needed to disappear. During the break, I saw him alone, sitting on the steps outside the school. I decided to approach, with no specific intention, maybe just on impulse. Not eating today? I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up, surprised. Not really hungry, honestly. I sat beside him. The rain from the night before still lingered in the air, and the sky remained gray. Your performance at the theater was impressive, I said. You've got real talent, he smiled, but it was a restrained smile, one that took effort. Thanks. It was important to me. I thought my mom would show up, but well, the sentence hung in the air, suspended by a pain he didn't express. But I recognized all too well. Did she know you were performing? He hesitated, then nodded. She knew. But she always finds an excuse. Work, exhaustion, some commitment. Sometimes I think she just doesn't want to see. I took a deep breath. It hit me in an unexpected way. What about your father? I asked before I could stop myself. Leo shrugged with a cold kind of ease. He disappeared when I was around 12. Used to message sometimes, then stopped. My mom never talked much about him. I think there was some unresolved drama between them. Drama? My heart clenched. I was the drama, the shadow he didn't know existed. It must be hard growing up with all that silence, I murmured, more to myself than to him. Yeah, he replied. But you learn to deal with it. I'm not the only one, right? I looked at him and saw a strength that moved me. Not the kind of strength born from never suffering, but the kind from surviving wounds that never fully closed down at that moment. I felt something that scared me. It wasn't just empathy. It was a kind of affection. I hadn't expected to feel Dot. It was strange to grow attached to that boy. He was in so many ways the most direct link to one of the most painful chapters of my life. And yet, there we were, two souls marked by the same woman who pretended to be perfect Dot in the days that followed. Leo became more present, even without knowing he had already taken up a dangerous space inside me. He showed up earlier, helped organize the classroom before lessons, asked about books, about life, about me, and I let myself go, as if unconsciously I wanted to get back at his mother in a silent, subtle way, as if by becoming important to Leo, I could occupy a space Ana Paula would never understand. But it wasn't just that. Behind the anger, there was something more sincere. I saw in him a reflection of my younger self, full of questions, silently, hurt, wanting to be loved without having to ask. On a random Thursday, near the end of class, Leo asked me for advice about his future. He was torn between applying for an arts program or pursuing a more stable path. Do you think I'm good enough? He asked. I couldn't answer right away, because that question was bigger than he realized. It echoed my own youth when all I wanted was to hear someone say I was capable. Leo, you're better than you think. You just need to believe that before the world convinces you otherwise, he smiled. And for a brief second, I saw a light in his eyes that almost made me forget who he was. But I couldn't forget, no matter how much I tried. And then that same afternoon, after he left, something inside me shifted again. An uncomfortable feeling, as if we were crossing an invisible line. I started to question my own limits. How far was it okay to nurture this bond? At what point did it stop being professional or safe? That night, I went home more restless than usual. I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time, trying to understand who I was becoming. I had survived pain, betrayal, abandonment, but could I survive guilt? I knew something had to be done. I just didn't know what yet. What kept me awake that week wasn't the memories of the past, nor Leo's constant presence in my routine. It was what I was starting to feel, and how much it resembled something I never wanted to live through again. Uncontrollable attachment. It's hard to explain. It wasn't desire, nor romantic idealization. It was something else, a kind of affection that pierced through me without asking permission. And it scared me because it forced me to look into a mirror I'd avoided for years. On Friday, I received an email from the administration, a notice that Leo's parents had confirmed their presence for the upcoming school meeting. My heart skipped a beat. There was no way to avoid the inevitable anymore. Ana Paula was coming. I knew it would be just a school meeting, brief, impersonal. But that didn't lessen the emotional weight it carried. I spent the weekend on edge, partly because I needed to prepare myself to stay composed, partly because I felt vulnerable. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I could control my emotions. On Monday, Leo walked into the classroom with the same light smile. As always, my mom said she's coming. I think it'll be her first time back here since she studied at the school. It'll be good for her to see how well you're doing, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. Sometimes I think she doesn't even know who I really he said, not with bitterness, but with quiet exhaustion. She sees me, but she doesn't really see. That sentence echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. On Tuesday, the meeting was scheduled for late afternoon. I stayed in the classroom, straightening the desk, avoiding the clock. When I heard footsteps approaching in the hallway, my whole body tensed. It felt like I had traveled a decade back in time. Ana Paula entered the room the same way she always entered any space, as if she were about to be photographed. Flawless makeup, neatly pressed clothes, hair in soft waves. Her face was the same, and yet somehow different, colder, more distant, as if all the warmth had been drained and replaced with a mask of elegance. "Clara?" she said, surprise barely contained in her eyes. I nodded with a slight, formal smile. "Ana Paula, welcome." She hesitated before sitting. Leo followed behind, visibly uncomfortable. "I didn't know you still worked here," she commented. "I never stopped working here." She crossed her legs gracefully and looked around the room. "The school looks the same. Some things have changed. Others remained." The exchange of words was sharp but controlled. And it all happened in front of Leo, who had no idea of the tension connecting us. "Leo is an excellent student," I began. "Responsible, engaged, intelligent. He has incredible potential." She smiled, but it lacked warmth. "He takes after his father in that." I almost laughed, but held it in. What grotesque irony. Ana Paula, the same woman who tore my home apart, now sitting across from me, trying to take credit for something she had done nothing to build. "He built that on his own," I replied. "The foundation may come from genetics, but who he is today is a result of his own effort." Leo looked down, uncomfortable. I noticed. Ana Paula didn't. "In any case," she continued, "I'm glad he has a teacher who believes in him. These days, it's hard to find professionals who are stable." She wanted to provoke, to poison with class. She had always been that way, but I was no longer the same Clara who used to swallow everything in silence. "Stability isn't enough," I replied calmly. "We have to be aware of the impact we have on others, especially when we're shaping people." She stared at me for a few seconds, not smiling. Still philosophical, I see. Still honest. The silence that followed was broken by Leo. "Can we go now?" he asked, clearly anxious. "Of course," I said. "Thank you both for coming." Ana Paula stood, but before leaving, turned to me with a look as if searching for a crack in my surface. "You haven't changed as much as I expected. And you've changed exactly how I feared." It was the only moment I let something direct slip. Not out of anger, but for justice. She didn't respond. She just left, Leo quietly following. And there, alone in the classroom, I felt a strange relief. As if I had finally exhaled air I'd been holding in for years, but something lingered. The image of Leo standing between us. He didn't know. But he carried inside him the shards of a story no one ever told him, and that hurt more than any reunion ever could. In the days following the meeting, Leo became quieter. He didn't come by before classes often, nor did he stay in the room during breaks. It was as if something had broken, or perhaps just changed form. And while part of me felt relieved, another part ached in silence. I began to see more clearly just how deeply this had affected me. I asked myself if I had crossed the line, not with words, but with feelings. And more than that, I questioned whether it was fair for me to take up any space inside that boy's life. One day during break, I approached him. Leo was outside, leaning against a tree, headphones in, eyes fixed on the ground. "Can I sit?" I asked. He took out one earbud and nodded. "You okay?" I tried. He took a while to answer. "After the meeting, I realized a few things." "What kind of things?" "That my mom's good at pretending, but also that you don't like her, and that there's something unresolved between you two." My heart froze for a second. It was the first time he touched that invisible line between us. "I know it's weird," he went on, "but I could feel it. When you two spoke, it was like something wasn't being said. Something heavy, And I thought, is this about me? No, I answered too quickly. It was never about you. He looked at me with sincerity. There was pain there, but also maturity. Leo wasn't a child anymore, and maybe never had been. Maybe the absence of his mother, of his father, of the truth, had made him grow up too. Soon, if you knew something about me and her, would you tell me? He asked, his voice low. The question hit me like a sharp blow. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him everything, to open the past like a book and let him read every page, every line. I wanted to free him from the weight of the lie, but I realized this wasn't about me, it was about him, and he wasn't ready yet. I would tell you when the time is right, I said. When you're ready to hear it. He nodded slowly, then put his earbud back in. Not like someone ending a conversation, but like someone who understands that truth sometimes needs time. That night at home, I went to my bookshelf and pulled out an old box. Inside were letters, photographs, and an envelope with my name, never opened. It was a letter Ana Paula had left at the time, after everything. I had never had the courage to read it. But now, after all these years, maybe I finally could. I opened it. Clara, I know you'll never forgive me. And I don't expect you to. I fell in love with him, but it wasn't out of malice. It was loneliness, weakness, vanity. You were always better than me at everything, and I envied you in silence. Taking what was yours made me feel less small, but it never made me happy. You lost a man. I lost a friend, and maybe the one soul who truly knew me. If you ever read this, know that I regret it deeply. Ana Paula, I finished reading with trembling hands. There wasn't true remorse there, just awareness. But somehow, that was enough. In the days that followed, I kept my distance from Leo, not out of fear, but out of respect. I knew he needed space, and over time he understood too. Our relationship, once filled with silent intensity, became something lighter, more subtle. There was still affection, but without attachment. The school year passed. Leo grew in his body, his gaze, his decisions. He chose to pursue the arts despite the uncertainty. He earned a scholarship to study abroad. On the last day of class, he waited for me at the classroom door. I wanted to thank you, he said. You changed a lot in me. You're the one who allowed change to happen, I replied. He smiled. And before he left, he handed me a small envelope. Don't open it now. Only when you feel it's time. I stored the envelope in the same place as Ana Paula's letter. Life doesn't resolve everything with answers. Sometimes it only gives us silence in return. And in that silence, I understood some wounds don't close with forgiveness, but with acceptance. Some truths don't free us. They only make us more human. Leo never found out he was the son of the man who broke me. Not then. Maybe one day, maybe never. But he knew he was loved. That he was seen. And that was more than most ever get. And me, I became something I never thought I could be. The bridge between who I was and what I needed to let go. Not for revenge, but for healing.